Welcome to the Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show will have a talk about a Linux project, such as a distribution, a desktop environment, or application. Or sometimes we throw that all out the window, or the swinging doors, as it were, and have a chat about something like news or any topics out there in the world wide web of excitement. Anything that is Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion. I'm Nate, a Linux fitness and vintage tech enthusiast with an almost unhealthy obsession with the OpenSUSE project. And with me today, I've got White Chocolate, Colin, Vince of Sleepy Eye variety, Skrapjaw, Ben, Eric Adams has come back again, and Jinda. And if you notice today, Jinda's at the butt end. He's the caboose, but not the caboose of jokes.
As it should be.
Yep, as it should be.
Well, on the docket for today, we're going to do a news flight night. We're going to check what's on the menu for next week, a community free pour last call. But first, what have you been doing in Linux? Skrapjaw, you said you've been doing some cool things with Jack Audio. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but lay it on me.
Not necessarily Jack Audio, because I'm on Pipewire. I'm on Fedora 35. I used to do a lot with the Pipewire and Jack, not Pipewire, but Pulse and Jack. And I had a startup script and everything. Well, my buddy Michael, aka Vash, got a hold of me about some stuff he was looking at and turned me on to this Tech Over Tea podcast. And a particular episode, I'm going to give credit to what I've been working on with for two, a guy that goes by @DABoom_ on Twitter. And so he's using these a handful of applications that make routing a little easier. QPW graph, which is just a patch bay. It's very well laid out. It holds everything right in place where you need it. And Jack Mixer, which is an app I hadn't messed with before. It works really well in Pipewire. It's just a really basic mixer application where you can add in inputs and output channels. You can select which of your input channels go to which of your output channels. It has MIDI capability. There's one quirk with the MIDI though, if you have toggles for like soloing or mute. And then there's on my Nano control, I also have an ARM record. That's a toggle. It doesn't handle toggles very well, but there's a really cool application, a really cool use for an application that I found in trying to get these toggles to work. See, the Nano Control 2 by Korg has a Windows-only configuration app, and so you have to run it through Wine. I've ran it through Wine before, but for some reason I couldn't get it to run in Wine. And here's the hack. This is the gem that I found messing with all of this. It really wasn't the audio stuff, even though there's some cool stuff with that, and there's a little startup script and whatnot. It's very similar to how I used to do it on Pulse and Jack. I used Steam Proton to install the Windows application. So here's how you do it. You go into your Steam app, load that up, go to add a game, and go to add a non-Steam application or non-Steam game. I forget what it says, but it's in the bottom left-hand corner when you're in your library. And then go select the exe file that you want to load. Now I had an installer. There was like, I don't know if it was an MSI installer or if it was a .exe installer for this, but then before you launch it, go into the compatibility options as you would any other game and in your library and select Proton, force compatibility, and then select any of the Proton versions. Then launch it. It worked. I think the issue for me is I'm forcing my system to use only the NVIDIA graphics, and there's some quirks with Wine with that on Optimus enabled CPUs when you have Intel and NVIDIA together. But, it's Steam, and Proton is geared towards graphical interfaces and all of that. So it just worked. So the second step is after it's installed, you have to go back then to the preferences on that game or application as it is. And then you have to change the file path. Go in through, there's a hidden folder in your home directory where Steam puts all of your games and whatnot, and all of the Wine prefixes, which is what Proton is. Proton's just a fork of Wine. So you go find the Wine prefix that is associated now with the app you just installed. Go in there and find the binary for the installed app and change that in Steam to be now your non-Steam application or non-Steam game, and then it will load the application. So, and it works. Now the graphic interface on it's a little bit slow, a little bit buggy, and I'm sure I could use Proton tricks and go in and modify some of that, or try a different Proton version, or even use some of the different launch commands for Proton. But if you have any problems with apps running in, because I tried Bottles, I tried just the standard Wine Tricks, Wine HQ stable. I tried a whole bunch of things. I couldn't get any of them to work out of the box. And so I just was like, well, Steam's got a Wine version in it. I'm going to try that. And lo and behold. So now I can change all of the CC functions on my MIDI controller because Steam works.
That's pretty awesome.
That's a good hack right there.
So you can probably launch it then without even launching Steam then, just by using the Proton version of Wine, right?
I think so. I haven't tried. I'm probably dig into that, but I have Steam open quite often anyway. The other app I tried because I was like, well, if this works on this, let's see what else I can do. I haven't used Fruity Loops Studio in years because I've been on Linux and it's always a pain in the butt to get to run in Wine. Well, guess what? It works and it runs well because Fruity Loops Studio has a very heavy graphical interface, and Proton and all that is set up just fine for it. The only issue with that, and I think it's just because I'm on Fedora, is there's a Wine ACO package that will allow you to have multi-channel access for your audio cards, and you can set it manually with the Wine ACO app on the Linux side in like Jack or Pipewire. So that way, inside of the Wine prefix, wherever Fruity Loop Studio is sitting, it sees that as an ACO interface that has all of your different I/O. So as it stands, the app runs really well, but the Fedora, there's just not a well-packaged version of Wine ACO, so you're stuck with using stereo or 2 mono channels to record. But if you just want to do a step sequencer and drop files in it, which is probably what I'm going to end up doing, I'm going to work with some of that. So there's some gems in there. I challenge the rest of you guys to go try and install some Windows apps through Steam that way, because I want to know what results you get.
When Steam started with Proton, I wondered if at some point, and I know it's not their focus, they're focused on games, but I wondered if at some point, like, will this work for other software that isn't primarily focused on, accelerated graphics and games? So that's cool. That's really neat to hear that.
It's been my week with audio and Linux.
Didn't Ardor, with their latest release, is it like 6 or something? Didn't they just release a sequencer as well? I think that they did put that in there. It's like someone said it's pretty simple, but that there is a way to do some like loops and stuff.
Probably. There's probably a basic step sequencer out there. But there's a lot of programs that you can use if you just want a basic tracker, sequencer, synthesizer. You can go grab those. And if that's what you do and what you want, Fruity Loops is the thing. FL Studio is by far, and it's a full function DAW too. You don't have to use it as a step sequencer. You can record tracks in. I had used FL Fruity Loops since version 3 before it was producer or studio or anything, and then jumped to Linux and was like, well, I really didn't mess with a whole lot of sequencing, and there's other apps for it, but
that's very cool.
Circle back.
Yeah.
If you have any links you can share on that, any of that stuff, that'd be really cool. Sorry, Vince, I interrupted you.
I can drop some links in the Telegram and the Element, and I'll put some in this chat here to some GitHub pages and whatnot. I'll put DA Boom's GitHub, and I'll drop a link to that segment from the Tech on T podcast where he's talking about his.
So I had a reason to try these Pipewire patch bays last week as well, and I put the links for the patch bays in chat. And it's also because Wendy's here as well in chat. I believe there's a mutual friend of ours who had been complaining that when you try to stream your desktop to Discord, and Wendy was talking about the same thing in Linux Out Loud. In Linux, it doesn't capture the audio to Discord, so you'll only be able to see the screen and not hear any audio. For example, if you're streaming a game or if you're playing a video or whatnot. And these patch bays actually allow you to then route the output from whatever application you're having back into Discord. That's a pretty cool way of doing things.
The is it running it back into Discord through where your mic input is? Because that's how No.
It's just directly the output from the application back into Discord. Oh wait, is it? You mean the mic input for Discord? It could be. I can't remember. I have to get back into it and have a look. But I got it working, and then that was last week, and a week is a long time for me.
Let me know, because the problem I've had with trying to hack it like that, and say I'm playing Rocket League and someone wants to watch and they can't hear it. I've just went back and I patched Rocket League sound back into where Discord is catching my mic from. The only problem is people that don't want to watch your stream now have to hear it because it's coming through your microphone.
So if someone's just chatting to someone but they're not watching your stream, I get that now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only thing. I don't know if that's an issue of whether it's X11 or if it's wavelength differences there, because I know, or even, I know some of that stuff is all mixed together, and however Discord is trying to capture, it may just not have a place to capture the audio. I don't know.
That I'm not sure of.
It's been an issue for a while, though.
I was playing with a QJack control, and where you can route sound to different devices and whatnot. It's very simple. I just literally like drag and like make lines. So is that the same concept of how you are patching things into Discord?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And QPW control looks it functions exactly like how Carla or Patchage, all of those work. It just looks different, and it saves the location of all of the apps and the ins and outs and all of your routing much better than Carla. Because Carla will remember where things are plugged in, but it's like they're thrown all over the screen when you reload it. Sometimes, at least that's my experience on Fedora. I think there's a little bit of a disparity in the maintaining of the different things. Because right now, if you think of a Venn diagram, there's two circles. There's Pipewire over here, and then there's the circle over here that is FulkXT and all of the things he maintains. And he maintains Jack and some ALSA stuff and all of these other things like Carla, and a lot of that stuff works with Pipewire because Pipewire is just meant to translate a lot of all of those system calls and just use them. But yet FulkXT is not. I don't think he is focusing much of his attention on making them work the other direction because he's got so much he's maintaining. So there's some issues there. They're not intentional. They're just the state of things.
Right.
So
which is the one that remembers your patching? Because QJack control doesn't seem to remember anything.
QPW graph.
QPW graph.
It's got bright neon colors in it. You can really tell what things are and where they are at.
That's for me for later. I will follow up on that because maybe I'll have a new patching interface or whatever. Excellent. Well, very cool. I know that we're going to do like an audio night one of these nights. We need to probably play with some stuff ahead of time, but I think it'd be fun to like talk audio stuff. Thinking for like an application appetizer, maybe some different audio applications. I'm thinking that's what I'm thinking right now. I'm gonna try and flesh out a little bit. We can, of course, send me suggestions at linuxsaloon.com or in the Telegram, or you can hit me up on Discord, wherever, anywhere. Very cool.
I'm gonna reach out to Da Boom and see if he wants to pop in.
That would be cool.
At some point too.
I would absolutely say yes to something like that. Well, on the subject of audio, I was playing with an application called Lingot. It's a musical tuning application. So I'm picking up the bass guitar once again, and I wanted to make sure that the guitar was properly tuned, and I didn't want to use an application on my phone because I just didn't. I didn't want to. So I was searching on the web for a Linux application, and this one popped up, and it seemed to have, a lot of good, it was ranked high and had some reviews on it. So I thought I'd give it a try. It wasn't a Flatpak though, so I wasn't able to install it via Flatpak. I didn't search for a snap, but I did use the OpenSUSE or the open build service package installation thing. It's called OPI. So I just did sudo OPI Lingot, and the OpenSUSE system, whatever, it went out there and searched all the repositories, found it, and said, "Here's a repository." So I just selected whatever one, the repository that seemed to make the most sense. It had the latest version, installed it, and it works quite well. I really like it. It has a meter. It tells you when you're good, and it gives you plus or minus, like how close it is to actually being true to whatever, the right key. And it's really neat. As I'm here, it's saying I'm talking in A sharp, so that's kind of funny. But anyway, so if you are picking up the some sort of instrument, it doesn't matter what instrument it will give you. It will be able to help you tune any instrument that it can listen to. So I suppose it would mean even digital instruments too, because analog circuitry needs to be tuned to, I guess, some of the old ones or the really fancy ones.
Do you know if they have an app by any chance? Because we've had to do that to tune. My daughter's taking up the harp, and a harp is it's basically like a stand-up piano. There's so many strings, and it's always out of tune. That's sort of the party piece of a harp, is it's continuous tuning. So anyway,
this would do that. You could tune it with that. Yeah, it's anything, anything that makes noises.
Even you in A sharp, apparently.
Yep, apparently A sharp.
So Lingot, is it Lingot?
Correct. I know it is for Debian, and for OpenSUSE, I haven't checked anything else.
What's really funny about that is Duolingo, the language learning app. I use it. I'm learning Spanish, and so they have a virtual currency called Lingot.
Oh, nice.
So when you said Lingot, I'm like, why do I know that? Oh yeah.
I guess there's another one that has an interesting name that somebody said. Is it Vince? Did you say it was something like G stringer or something like that?
Are you leading me down a path?
Yes.
It's just an Android app called G Strings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Adam would like it.
Of course he would.
Yeah.
Do we think Adam's an A sharp?
I think it's an A flat.
A flat.
Or G sharp, depends on how you look at it. Well, welcome Vash and Adam. I am very glad you made it.
I was just talking about Vash a minute ago. He's the one that started me on this whole audio adventure this week.
Yeah, he
I
got
was just dreaming of Vash.
Vash is a bad influence.
He is. He's an enabler, but in different ways.
He is. It's true.
He might be having trouble with his audio.
I do enough
I
of
think I'm all
enabling
right right now.
myself.
Oh, no, there he is.
We're just going to keep
He
talking
was
about you,
choosing
Vash.
not to answer.
Well, a lot of times
No,
just being silent.
My alert went off. Apparently, I was being talked about, so I figured I would hop on for a few.
Is your ears itching?
Excellent. Well, before we get into the main topic of the news, there was a straw poll, and sorry, Eris, I meant to put this in when I first started the stream, so I'm going to stall a little bit here. If you would like to vote right now on, is there a need for a new desktop environment in Linux? I'll check that in a little bit. But a couple of replies before I get to those results is some people said more environments. I feel like the disabled guys and gals don't get enough love, to be honest, in Linux. I think that's a valid point. Says, those are the wrong questions. Poll suggestions are always welcomed. Smile. I see a lot of people ask the question in response to System 76 going their own way. My response is basically, well, System 76 is a company that sells hardware to customers. Customers they get feedback from. Clearly, System 76 identified a gap in the current offerings based on customer feedback. That said, I'm quite happy and comfortable with GNOME and hope that someone will continue to maintain some kind of fork of Pop Shell as a GNOME shell extension once System 76 does go all on their own DE. I think that's fair. The reason I chose unsure is because of innovation versus creative differences. Someone or a group can create a new desktop using aspects of others or new ideas. Good examples would be a budgie or pop shell, like Cosmic. The same person or group could join another established project. They could accelerate the development, etc. The other possibility is that they disagree with the establishment and take their talents elsewhere. In my opinion, these are the root causes of the fragmentation. I think that's pretty fair. So I'll go ahead and check the poll. See, let's see what the results are. Are you excited? I hear drum roll. So, is there a need for new desktop environment in Linux? So, 52% of the vote said yes. Not all needs are satisfied with the current ones. Innovation is still needed. 38% no. Enough already. Work on the ones that already exist. And 9.5% said not sure. So what do you think, Eric? Do we have too many desktop environments?
Oh, I feel like I've answered this question so many times. My default answer for do we have too many X in Linux? The answer is no. There's never too many. If somebody gets bored one weekend and decides they want to fork something and go wild, and then it turns into the next big thing, like that's what it's all about. That's why it's open source. That's why the code's there. That's why people can have access to it and do things with it. I mean, what did they think people were going to do? Like it's these are smart people who decide they want to do something different. And in this case, this is a business that is servicing its clientele. And they probably have had a lot of feedback. They have their own personal experience with things. And no, I think it's really cool. I mean, I love that Unity has had a comeback, which was seemingly dead. No, I love choice. I think choice is a wonderful thing. And I think that, if anyone can pull off another desktop environment, I think System 76 has really shown that they have some interesting ideas and ways to sort of incorporate all of sort of the best of things that we've seen in the Linux desktop. And, they felt a little penned in by ext4, or GTK4.
Mm-hmm.
And so good for them. They want to do something different. So if the company can withstand to fit, the cost of those developers to do that work, and they feel like it's strategically in their best interest to do so, I think that's a beautiful use of open source.
Well, it looks like Evelyn Piplaskas, I think I'm saying that correctly, and I think she's from Down Under also, if I'm not mistaken. She says, Eric is hitting the nail on the head. So hopefully nobody's a nail here. I'm getting hit in the head. But yeah, I have to agree with you, Eric. And I would actually go another step in saying I think Linux is like an art, or software development like an art. And I think that art should be expressed. The question is there too much art? I don't know. I don't think so. So I think, if someone needs to scratch an itch, go ahead and do it. If it's only for themselves, then it's totally fine. And if not, there are lessons that can be learned. So like Unity was its own thing, right? And because of the features that Ubuntu rapidly put in the Unity project, it actually had a big impact on other desktop environments. So I think that even though they weren't directly contributing, that whole rising tide raises all ships. What do you think, Vash? Do we have enough desktop environments?
I tend to be on the side of Eric. I mean, people are always going to try to come up with new things and are going to try to always bring new ideas to the table. And you can argue, yeah, you should probably try to go work on another project. But what some people don't understand is once you're that deep into a project, it gets very difficult to, change course. If a project's going to go one way, then there's not a whole lot you can really do to, beyond express your opinion to change that. So sometimes it is easier just to start from a point in the past or start from scratch.
And also we've seen things like good ideas in other projects brought into larger projects. Smaller just let's say a distribution or desktop environment, if they don't have the burden of millions of users, let's say, which is kind of a burden because you have to be really careful not to upset anybody or, break anything. It gives them the opportunity to try a lot of things that, frankly, some developers just can't do because of the situation they're in. So we've seen that where a smaller desktop environment distribution, application, whatever it is, has some idea that becomes, sort of innovative or attractive, and it eventually, becomes part of some larger project. So that innovation doesn't necessarily have to be limited to an entirely separate thing. Might start that way, but it could then end up influencing something, the whole tail wagging the dog kind of situation.
Adam, what do you think? Do we have too many desktop environments? Seems like you're the contrarian here, so I want to get a counterpoint.
I think we have just the right amount, actually. Like, I think having a few like major desktops to choose from and a bunch of smaller ones seems fine to me. Like, I wouldn't want any more, but I don't think we need necessarily less.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So you think like the resurgence of CDE is probably not going to take the world by storm?
Yeah, not, in my opinion, not much of a useful thing to add to things. But hey, like people can have their projects, people can have their fun, but it doesn't really move the needle either way. Like you're not gonna see like a huge resurgence of like, hey, Ubuntu and Fedora, they're all CDE now, right? It's not gonna happen. But it also, like, its existence doesn't, it's not a zero-sum game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, its existence doesn't preclude like others being successful. So I mean, it's whatever. I think right now there's enough. I don't think there should be more, but I don't necessarily think others have to die.
Now, this is just to throw another wrench in this conversation, but have you seen like Minority Report, how they like interact with like the air?
Yeah, it's a terrible interface.
Oh,
Could you imagine how tired your arms would get in like such short amount of time? Anyone who's used like a touchscreen laptop for any amount of time, like holding their hand up to tap the screen, no, it's awful. It's a terrible way to do things.
People would have better sculpted shoulders if we went to a Minority Report style interface, and so actually it'd be a gain for everybody. So we need a desktop environment.
There are other activities that nerds engage in that could buff up their shoulders, but it doesn't. So I'm not really sure that's going to make a difference.
Just buy a racing wheel with the force feedback.
Ooh, yeah. Good call.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Or even playing like Mario Kart, right? You got the wheel thing, Mario Kart.
With the Wii.
The Wii, yeah. Wii U.
I mean, just listen to some really good music and raise the roof for 30 minutes, and you'll be good.
Well, there we go.
Reminds me of, there's a good segue to Para Paradise. If you've ever played any of the Konami dancing games.
Yeah.
Only those guys would use touchscreens.
So you're saying the touch panel type interfaces. There was like, for a while there, it seemed like every show, like golly, I can't recall, like the NCIS or type shows, where everything had like this touch thing, and they do like all this stuff with their hands on a big panel or whatever. Like, so kind of being like.
So my experience, my opinion is colored by my experience of playing VR.
Okay.
Because VR games, the motion sickness aside, like, you think, oh man, it'll be really cool to go through this game like as an archer, right? Like shooting arrows and stuff. By the time you've shot like 15 arrows, your arms are jelly. Like, it's a lot of work to like constantly move your arms to do that motion, right? And if I had to do that to like just use a computer, I just wouldn't use a computer. Like, if I had to like reach around and like, wave my arms and grab this and grab that virtually, like, no, I'd just be like, you know what? gonna go touch grass for a while. I'm done. You know, like I'm not gonna be here.
Yeah, I'm all in on the voice command. Could you imagine having it? I don't know what the technology would have to be for you to be conversational with computing. I mean, I know
Yeah,
I'm off on a wild tangent here, but like that to me is the end goal. Like, I don't have to touch anything. I don't have to look at anything. I just have a conversation.
Yeah, the computer would have to understand like the ambiguities of what you say and everything. That's the hard part, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, we need less of the.
Yeah, I don't. Trust me. Play some. Now, Nate, you're in good shape, so it wouldn't affect you as quickly. But most nerds, like 20 minutes of VR, and they're like, I'm done for the day. Like, it's a lot.
I would probably toss my cookies of 20 minutes of VR time.
Without a
but,
doubt.
yeah.
Without a doubt.
Hey, just not VR, but AR. Just to have all at some point, it could see a future where instead of having a 37,000-inch curved screen that goes from one side of the room to the other, you just have like a green screen in front of you, and you put some glasses on, and then it just turns it into the whatever display you need. And then you can use your mouse and keyboard, or in front of your face. You could do both. Now,
Or
that
do
would
like
be cool.
or do like old people did when mice first started to come around. Just pick it up off the table and move it around.
Yeah, I don't have a tail on mine to do that with.
Well, then yours is a hamster.
I want
Hams.
I want Tiny Stark's desktop.
Yeah, just sorry, go ahead.
I want Tiny Stark's desktop.
Yeah.
Jarvis.
You joke
Yeah.
about picking up the mouse. I got my dad a computer in the early 2000s, and he did exactly that. I hooked it all up, and he picked up the mouse and was like, "Do I talk into this?"
Like it's a remote or something, right?
Yep.
Like a TV remote.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, Dad."
You can try, but
Why is
yeah.
the
You're right.
space command not working? I don't know how to work a space command.
that's how on a side note, that's how I engage like older people when they like do something like that. Like it's obviously the wrong way to do it. They're like, "Do I talk to it?" I don't know. Give it a try. And like just they'll realize that it's not working and move on. But I'd rather them learn that it doesn't work than me just tell them.
If you had a mouse with a trackball underneath, you could hold it like a remote. You just flick the ball with your finger underneath and just move it.
Ugh, I'm getting like flashbacks from the Apple TV touchpad remote, and I'm like, ugh.
Do you anyone here watch Star Trek: The Voyage Home? And Scotty picks up
I
the
was
mouse.
thinking the exact same thing. Yep.
Computer, hello computer, and it says keyboard. How quaint.
I like Vash's comment in here. Alexa, beat the game.
Right.
Sorry to all the Alexa users out there. Not sorry.
Well, that was a fun little tangent.
That was a fun tangent. In the Alexa has been kind of fun. I guess I shouldn't say that. The LadyTube in the past, before I was all like security conscious about it, it was actually fun to have conversations, when nobody's home, just to talk to something. And it would actually do okay. But then I started asking her or it if she was spying on me. And she'd always tell me she wasn't, but I didn't believe her. So we had to break up.
I think she was.
To segue back to the topic there, I remember, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, Nate, you had mentioned something about open source and people having to eat. I think this is the thing with System 76 doing that and doing their own DE. That's a natural progression of a company growth right there, where there's technical debt that is technically not theirs to some degree because you have someone else maintaining these very popular DEs that have a lot of work behind them. But then again, you're trying to make this integrated system that works very seamlessly within this Linux environment. And if you've got the money to pay guys to do it, how much better would it work than having to worry about what's coming downstream and then having to fix and integrate it and then patch it into what you're already doing? That right there is a very good sign for that company if we're looking at one that's doing well.
Yeah, though I would be concerned that they're taking on a lot of technical debt by developing their own DE and not having it as a community project. A lot of the criticism that Canonical got from starting Unity was much the same. The not invented here, I don't want to say syndrome, but attitude that people had.
But can you contribute? Is it going to be open up to where people can contribute and do bugs and tracking and all of that? Because if so, that's great because then the maintaining is in house, and then they have the filter of all of what's coming in, so it still works to their benefit instead of what all's happening out there. Say Canonical's changing something, KDE changes something, or GNOME changes something, or whatever, and then having to re-implement something in the case of GNOME desktop.
So I'm gonna step in and say that the idea that it's open and people can contribute, but System 76 is the arbiter of like what goes in there or not, is very similar to how Google approaches the Chromium project, and they get a lot of criticism for that. So that could be another thing, that if they make it open, but they keep it very closed in terms of like their own, like, oh, these are really good contributions that could really help, but I don't want these, right? And like there's not a discourse, that becomes a problem. And I could see that going, because again, they're our company, the bottom line, etc. Open source is good and it's part of their ethos, but kind of hard to run a company on goodwill and happiness and freedom, right?
I give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I will too.
Just because it's like, hey, they're growing and they're doing their thing, and they're people up to this point. People have been saying good things about System 76 for the most part. I mean, I'm sure there's people with criticism too, but they're this right here could be another one of my criticisms of how conversations go a lot of times in Linux and open source is anytime some company comes in and they start doing things that are good for the company, we get this chicken and the egg thing. We had it for a long time with gaming, and luckily Valve has stuck around with us for such a long time to solve the issue of the chicken and the egg, which is user base and software that works, right? So we have the same thing with another DE. It's like, okay, we have another piece of software that they're making work for their setup, and already we're like, well, like, well, come on, let them let a company that's functioning with money to pour in, because let's face it, money greases the rails on a lot of projects. It takes that pressure of having to eat off of the developers, and even though we crowdsource a lot of things, which is great. I mean, there's merits to both sides, and I think it's cool that we have another company that's making cash that can pour money into things that work. Because if it works really well, then we have an issue. Then we have a thing like with Fedora or Red Hat, where they're enterprise level, and it's like we all benefit from that massive amount of money that goes through that company, right? I'm on Fedora 35, so, and the guy that maintains Pipewire is working for those guys, which is great. I like the fact that there's that pressure taken off of the developers and the open source, where we have that freedom to be like, okay, these guys over here are making money, and it's like this is their job. And yet it's still open to where people that it's the hobby can come in and be geniuses about something and go, hey, look, guys, check out what I did. We have both. We have the best of both worlds. Microsoft can't say that. They can just come in and, throw money at the Linux Foundation, and they can benefit. But do we benefit from all the stuff that's in their black box? Not really, because we can't mess with it if it's broken. That's why I'm over here. Their audio stack is garbage. So it's like, this is my thing. So we need to, I think it's cool that they're doing that. And even though I voted no, we don't need any more DEs because there's plenty of them. We should work on the ones we have. But in this case, it's like, well, whatever. I'm not against somebody else making one, but in general, I'm like, I don't want to have to choose from, not that I'm going to choose because I'm on KDE, but if I had to be coming in new and there's already all this choice, it's like, oh man, what's up with that? There's so many things I don't know. You just got to know somebody. Use what they use for a minute, but I think it's cool.
I think you made a good point a little while ago. Goodwill doesn't buy you cheeseburgers, so, and man's got to eat. As reference.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
It's true.
I'm excited to see what it is. I want to see what they do with it.
The road?
All of it. I mean, Budgie is the latest DE to make it and actually break the mold and be something else. Right? I think that's the most recent new desktop environment that is widespread. It's become widespread now. It's been adopted by Ubuntu, I think, is an official, right? Ubuntu
Budgie,
and I think Int has one. It started on Solus, right? So.
Well, there's Cinnamon, Budgie. Those are the two newer ones, I would say. Got
Cinnamon's the
Pantheon.
fork, though. Yeah, I haven't used Pantheon.
That's elementary, basically.
Okay.
Yep. All right, well, it's time to muddle our way through the news. And as always, a big thanks to Michael for This Week in Linux for mixing up a great flight of topics, although he didn't give me quite as many this time because he's busy. But that's okay. But speaking of Michael, he was at the Ubuntu Summit. He did a talk there, and I didn't see his talk because I'm a lousy representative of the Tux Digital Network. But what I did listen to was an interesting conversation, or part of the conversation, that Mark Shuttlesworth was having, like in his address, I should say, when he's talking about how Canonical is largely a remote work environment. And he talked about the importance of meeting in person, which is why they do these summits. They do them, I guess, twice a year. It helps to invigorate and make create camaraderie and everything else. And so it got me to thinking, kind of a question for the panel here. How important is that face-to-face social interaction for communities, for people? We have this, online lug here, and I've met none of you in person. Yet I feel like I know you. But how more important would it be, or how beneficial would it be if we did actually meet in person? The one guy I did meet, Steve's very own. Well, he's not even here because he's probably busy. What do you think, Jinda? Do you work remote very much? I know you do engineering, and so
yeah,
I'm curious.
I work remote 2 days a week.
Okay. How important are those other 3 days when you actually meet people face to face?
For me, it doesn't make any difference. The only difference is that I can't walk out into the shop and kick a machine in the butt. We got a plasma cutter and a CNC machine that like to act up, and I physically just can't walk out there and give it the royal booting. So, other than that, there really isn't, for me, there is no difference. You're just going to send me an email saying, hey, this is wrong, this is right, fix this, do this. I don't really see much of a difference because of my position.
I'm pretty, I'm probably like the worst person to answer the question because I'm perfectly happy I worked from home for 15 years. Like I'm perfectly happy to be at home all the time. Think to myself, when's the last time I drove my car? Those types of things. Like I'm happy with that. But I do think there is something about being in a room with someone face to face and seeing their body, movements and their, I feel like the people here that have known each other for all these years, like, yes, we absolutely have great relationships, and we have most of what a normal human sort of friendship and relationship would be, except that I think if all of us met, it would never be the same again. Like there is a certain element of like having had proximity to someone that can't be recreated remotely.
It's the smell.
Well, you have a certain manly musk that, yes, I've heard that once you're in a room with you, like, you're never the same. But no,
it's not about the smell in that case. But go ahead.
No, I really do. There really is something to it, and probably more so for people who haven't spent as much time together virtually as we have. I know just, in working, I would do a lot of speaking to someone on the phone for a long time and then meeting them in person. And that was because it wasn't like a friend relationship. That proximity made a big difference there because I felt like we could get a lot more work done than we could through email or phone calls. But even people I think who have spent a lot of time, talking to each other on the phone or video chatting or whatever the case may be, once you meet in person, I think there's a huge difference. So
when I worked for a corporation and all the craziness happened in 2020 and we lost some of that the face-to-face and more remote work and whatnot, or almost entirely remote work for a while. I will say for me personally, I kind of lost a little motivation because I saw everything else that had to be done around me, and I couldn't focus as much on work. Although I will say I was still productive. It's not like I try to get one over on the company, because I'm not that way. But not having that face-to-face with people and like having that laugh or whatever, joking amongst the cubicles, as it were. That kind of, I don't know if camaraderie is the right word, but like, I guess camaraderie that you would have in the office environment. I know that for me, it was not fun being away from all the machines. Like Jinda, I didn't get to kick any of the machines because I didn't have to. Someone else did that. But it was nice to talk to the machinists, the people that actually built the things, because I got great face-to-face feedback on designs and whatnot. It was so much harder to do when remote. So, that was incredibly unfortunate there. And, well, I got laid off, so I don't have to worry about that now. I'm building my own machines now.
You were asking about communities, and in this case, we're all a bunch of GNU/Linux nerds.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, I experienced a similar kind of thing with Hello Phone. I experienced a similar change of things when I went to Self, right, in person around a bunch of other Linux nerds, and it was not the smell, surprisingly, but it was seeing people out in the actual world in meat space using their Linux machines, and I was, I'm a very big GNOME guy. I always had the same thing that I always use, kind of thing. And then seeing all in person, all of the different ways that people used it, their desktops were different, the applications they were using were different, their different machines and all this stuff. And it's I can't get that here. You could share your screen, but that's not the same. It's not the same as seeing it in, we know all of us use it, and we know millions of people use Linux, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when if you saw somebody in a coffee shop or wherever using Linux, you'd be like, hey, right? They're an instant friend, so to speak, right? Because you can go up to them and talk to them about it, and they're like, hey, there's dozens of us. But that, it was that kind of experience, right, that you could get with actual people in the room that I don't get from just seeing screenshots or a screen share on a Zoom call.
Right.
It's a totally different thing.
Yeah, when I went to Self and I got to meet Thomas, who's not here, I got to meet Noah, Leviticus, a few others, Linux Ninja. I got to meet him. It was a lot of fun actually meeting people that use Linux and having nerdy chats. Yeah, I do think any way you slice it, we're still social creatures, and I think even though I think I'm pretty adept at living behind a screen to interact with people, I don't mean to offend anybody by this, but I actually like social distancing. I've done that before. It was a cool thing. Me personally, I don't like crowded rooms and everything else. I don't have so much social energy, essentially. So there's something to be said for, the safety, I guess. Maybe that's not it. That's not a good thing to say, but of the
comfort.
The comfort. There we go. The comfort of being behind a screen. But I also see the value and the importance. And yeah, there is a risk in it, obviously, but I see there's a strong value in that. If I only got to see my family through a screen, that would be pretty depressing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just say that these days, because of so much remote things like this, this is a primary thing for a lot of people at work or school or whatever. I can easily see the number of agoraphobics out there, people who just can't handle being out in a crowd without freaking out.
Yeah,
it's probably increased a lot, right? And it's one thing to not care for big crowds, but it's another thing to drum up anxiety from being around people, right? And that's kind of the danger of being exclusively a remote worker or exclusively a remote community member and all that. It's different, right? It's just when you look at a screen, there's the illusion of depth, but your eyes are focused on something a couple feet away.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look outside, people who use computer a lot, it's computer vision syndrome, realize when they look at things at a different distance, They're like, oh, like my eyes don't work right anymore. It's that kind of thing, but like
Right.
in a social way, right? That socializing with people exclusively online, exclusively through digital means, does not give you the same experience, much in the same way that looking at a screen is not the same as looking at the horizon.
For sure. Yeah, if I go outside and I look at nature, it's all in high def. It's pretty cool.
Well, you mentioned too work. I mean, work for me was painful when it was in person, simply because the distractions were, and it being the IT guy and being the one that people came to with every silly little, IT related thing, it made my job difficult to focus. I really could never just like sit for an hour and do something, because there was just always someone needing something. So when I was at home, the opposite was true. I had lots of time, and I was able to get things done in a way that, I literally, when I first came home, I was able to get so much done that like I would get all my work done in a few hours, because I didn't have that constant, you can ignore a phone call, you can ignore an email, but when someone's standing in your doorway, there's no way to ignore them. You can't pretend like I'm not here. They're just going to stand there and wait for you to get off the phone or whatever it is you're doing, and there's no escape from that. So that's my experience of, again, and I just think there's a big difference between work and social, so the social aspect. Intimacy, and I don't mean in a sexual way, but like intimacy of just being close to another human being and seeing them. And Adam jokes about smelling, and it's not like I'm going to walk over and smell someone, but there is that concept of like smell has a lot to do with memory, and just the idea that you're in a shared space. And it's I look at you guys every week, and Nate, you're in a dark room with some light on your face, and like I see a certain amount of detail, but I know that if I was in a room with you, I would see you in a completely different way. You know what I mean? Like I would see you in 3 dimensions, and I would see what your hair look like and what your chin look like, and what like different things that I can't really see right now because
how big my nose is in real life.
Well, whatever, whatever it is. There is definitely something, and I think in a social and a friendship sort of way, there's a huge difference between being on a computer or being remote to being in person.
Yeah, I would imagine that Adam smells like Axe body spray, like a lot of it. That's.
I am absolutely offended. I have just filtered about 5 swear words directed at you, sir.
Wow.
Whoa.
No, like Axe. So my roommate wore Axe, and like when he would leave, it's like, am I in a middle school locker room? It was oppressive, man. It was the worst. I am. You cut me deep, Nate. I don't know that I can recover tonight. I might just have to. I don't know, man.
Oh God.
That's hilarious.
It'll be interesting if Adam shows up again after this episode.
Well, now when we know what we're getting him for Christmas, Axe body spray.
Yeah, I'm just got to get his address and just send him a case of it.
He's gonna change his Zoom picture to a can of Axe.
Right, yeah.
A can of Axe body spray and a tear.
Yep. It's gonna be like that 70s Earth Day commercial, but with like a middle schooler with a tear.
Oh goodness.
Good stuff. Well, Colin, you had something that you put into the show notes that I wanted you to talk on.
Yep. Which one? I put 2.
The first one. So the WoeUSB-ng.
Yeah.
Did I say it right?
Yeah, WoeUSB-ng. I made a video about WoeUSB quite a long time ago, and people were saying in comments that it was no longer working, which was true because I tried it. There's a new one I found, WoeUSB-ng. Now, this is just for writing a Windows ISO to USB. So I do those sorts of things on videos just in case people change their mind and want to go back to Windows. So this actually works pretty well. So I'm thinking about sort of making an updated video on that. But I just thought I'd put the word out there that there is another one around. It's on GitHub. There's some links there, or there's a link there to WoeUSB. So
Well, that's very
I
cool.
didn't know that was. Yeah, I discovered it not so long ago. It's just a rewrite. The developer said it's just a rewrite of the original WoeUSB, but yeah, it works pretty well. I've got the Windows 11 there. I've installed on my laptop just to try it out. I needed to update my sat nav on the Mazda, so I couldn't do it through VirtualBox because I didn't realize I need a SD hub plugged into USB. Otherwise, the SD card directly into the computer will not go through VirtualBox. So
Really?
if you didn't know that, you know that now. Yeah, it's got to be done through a hub. Otherwise, it will not pick it up. I tried all sorts of workarounds, but unfortunately didn't work. So I just installed Windows 11 on here, thought I'd try it out, hacked the crap out of it while I was installing it so I didn't have to, because it won't install on any of these computers unless you go into the command prompt and do a few little hacks. So I've worked those out as well, which was quite interesting. So yes, I've got Windows 11 running here, updated my Mazda sat nav a little bit, and all's working well. So then I look forward to installing Linux on there and nuking and paving Windows 11.
I'm going to go on their GitHub and put an issue and suggest they rename their project to Buyer's Remorse.
I'm sorry if you mentioned it, Colin, but what do you update it with a USB stick, or what? How do you get the data onto your car?
What the?
So you
there's
get
an
the sat nav data, SD card.
It's an SD card in the console, inside the
Okay.
console, and you take that out, and then you've got to download the Mazda toolbox. I had to get the old one, and yeah, I think I made an account a little while ago, so just log in with my account and then it updates it. But it does cost a lot of money to update, so I haven't done that. It did update a little bit. I'm thinking whether it's worthwhile the payment or not. So hence the reason why I haven't nuked Windows 11 yet. But, I need to use it again. So we'll see how we go.
Did you say you had that in a virtual box, or is it on hardware?
Which one? The
Windows 11 you said is in virtual box. I'm sorry.
It's on with VirtualBox and it's also on real hardware.
Okay.
Yeah.
The WoeUSB tool is like a UNet booting or like some kind of USB creator, but it's meant to create just Windows USBs, not Linux ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if you try to write a Windows DVD image to USB stick with like a regular Linux tool like Etcher, it's not going to work.
No. And this is a Win.
You can use Ventoy. You can actually use Ventoy also. If you drag and drop to Ventoy.
Oh, can you?
I have.
I didn't know that.
Work in the past, but this is quite handy. It's just a Python script essentially. So as long as you got the pkzip and some other Python thingies, then you can pip3 install it. So
and it's got
They should have a. Maybe I'll contribute like how to get this to work on OpenSUSE as well, just because I want to make sure OpenSUSE is represented.
It's got a nice, very simple little GUI. You just choose your ISO, choose the destination, done deal, and it worked pretty well. So it did. It was I think if my memory serves me correctly, it was a little bit more awkward on the original one, but this one is very simple. So it's a solution if people are running Linux and they've decided it's not good for them. I think they need to know that there's a tool out there that they can write Windows ISO to and get themselves back on track if they want to. So not everyone wants to remain in Linux, that's for sure. So
that's weird.
Isn't it? Hey.
Yeah, that's cool.
Some people get confused, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that.
Check out anytime you want, but you can never leave.
That's right. Once you refresh your repositories, you're here to stay. So in other news, Microsoft related, .NET 7 is bringing improved support on Linux. It also now supports architectures like x8, besides x86, ARM, 64-bit, IBM Power as well. So has anybody, did anybody here think that Microsoft will make a concerted effort to make .NET more performant on Linux? Does that come as a surprise to anybody?
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, like historically, right? But
Right.
no, given that this has been a thing for many years now. I don't know. I think you're looking for the historical answer, and that's no, because obviously.
Right, because at one time Microsoft said, or Ballmer, what was his first name? Jeff? No.
Steve.
Steve.
Yeah.
Steve.
That's fine.
He said Linux was a cancer. And now his company is actively supporting and making
Answer.
making Linux more performant.
Well, they want it to run on Azure, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
Actually, Azure at first was mainly supporting their own products, but
Yeah.
I think I just heard some statistic that like it was like 60 or 70% of Azure is now Linux. So
Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised at all. Just because of Azure.
no, those were different days. And that's why when people were like, "Oh, Microsoft," and shaking their fists, like Microsoft is such a different company now. Very few of the same people when Ballmer made that statement. Very few of the same people even work there. I mean,
Correct.
it's just holding on to these, long held, generalizations about a company's stance on something. I mean, Ballmer hasn't had an impact on day-to-day operations at that company in such a long time that
Almost 10 years.
yeah, it's completely irrelevant at this point.
But also, like, open source, like, people need to recognize you're not scrappy underdogs. Open source is the dominant thing these days. It's everywhere.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
sorry, when you're like getting mad at everyone else, you're punching down. Like, you like, this is not it's, you're not the scrappy underdogs that you were in the early 2000s. Like,
Exactly.
it's the default. So
time to move on then, I guess.
Well, it is in everything except the desktop, which the desktop itself is becoming less and less relevant.
Yeah.
So, the whole, like, I read something the other day about, the idea of the year of the Linux desktop. It doesn't matter because, like you said, like open source won a while ago, so.
Yeah, I can take you through like game consoles or devices and stuff, and they have a little section with open source licenses, and it's massive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the amount of projects these things use, like that's it. Like, you guys get mad at this mega corp Microsoft. It's like, dude, the open source community is absolutely gigantic. Like,
yeah,
you're getting mad at like what, a few thousand developers or whatever, and like a 1,000 executives, but like there's millions of people in open source. Like, come on, who's the actual winner here?
Yeah.
So Microsoft makes packages for CentOS, Debian, Fedora, OpenSUSE, SLE or SLES, and Ubuntu. So they have packages already built. And then official package archives for Alpine, Arch, the Arch Linux user repository, Red Hat Enterprise, and Ubuntu as well, also Fedora. So I think that's pretty wild. Just looking at the learn.microsoft.com and where to install .NET on Linux. They made it real easy, like super easy. I'm actually quite impressed they made it that easy. I think it's kind of funny you mentioned that Linux really isn't the underdog. I mean, 10 years ago, even if you would have said, did you know that .NET will be available on Linux? I would have laughed. And I said, yeah, right.
Well, look at the audience. I mean, when I think of my experience with Linux and why I even cared about Linux and why, I was an IT professional who inherited a lot of old systems. I had to do a ton of manual workarounds and just real pain in the butt kind of stuff. And when I found Linux and like the simplicity and the power of the command line tools in Linux, it's just like, holy cow, like this thing that I had to do with batch scripts and like, twine and, tape and like basically like patching things together. I can do these types of file system operations and networking type, like this system was made for that. And as someone who wasn't afraid of the command line, who actually, it's what I learned on. Like it's like, well, this is wonderful. I mean, this solves so many of my problems, and I think the same is true today for a lot of the professionals that find Linux and are like in the same position, and they're just like, this is great. And so if they're doing that with WSL on Windows, if they're finding that on a server, some sort of cloud server or something, wherever they're finding it, they find that the Linux, particularly the command line, is massively powerful and can help them achieve all these tasks that they need to achieve. Of course, Microsoft sees that, and they're going to say, make that person, whatever they're trying to figure out and fix and do, like, make whatever that is easier, because Microsoft has always been focused on developers. That's just always been what they do. Like, it's what they support, or is more their enterprise. A lot of the decisions they make is based on that aspect of their business, of their customer base. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they make these things easy to use.
So where do you think it goes from here? Do you think
So-
there are numerous like common frameworks to target now? Microsoft's .NET is obviously a big one. What do you think happens here with software development? What do you say, Colin, before I interrupt
Every
you?
time a new JavaScript framework is made, an angel gets its wings. That's all I know. No, but yeah, it man, first off, to be completely honest, if I knew that answer, I would be hooking up with some VC folks and getting me some money and making like a good business out of like what I know is the future. But since I don't, I'm just gonna be some weird guy on the internet and say things. So I think from here, it just becomes more and more like obfuscated from the user. And we see that in things like package managers being turned into app stores, and you're trying to like simplify to get people in. But the thing that, as Eric said, what most people get pulled into Linux for is like the power, right? But the trend is we need to make more guardrails, more hand holding and all that. And that's kind of the trend I see, is that I think Linux will grow, but in that direction. I don't agree with it, but I kind of see that going that way. Like simplification, but not from a technical simplification. I see it from a user-based simplification.
I actually kind of see both. I mean, so absolutely. And for good, it should be that way. Technology should be absolutely mindless. Any human being should be able to pick up a device and just use it. Like, that's where we need to go, right? That is I think should be everybody's goal that works on a UX or UI, is like, how do I make this so easy that literally anybody can pick it up with an average intelligence and just use it with very little friction, almost no friction, right? It just, they want to do that and they can do it. That needs to happen more and more. So that's a good thing. I want that to happen. And from a developer and from an IT perspective, there are people who now specialize. DevOps wasn't a thing, and now that's a critical thing, because someone has to understand how all of those pieces work and has to be really good at that piece of the puzzle, because honestly, developers shouldn't ever have to worry about that stuff, right? They have their tool set, they have their, the systems that they need to interact with to develop their code, and they should be able to just deploy it and not have to worry about anything behind where they're deploying to, because it's all takes away time and thought process, and like it's a waste of their energy and time. Now, should they understand it? Yes, absolutely. I firmly believe that everybody should understand how all that stuff works, especially if you're going to be pushing code out there and like that sort of thing. It's an important skill to understand those DevOps types of things. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's like driving a car. It's important to understand how to use a car, how to do it, properly. But at the end of the day, almost nobody knows how to fix their cars anymore, because they don't need to. The cars become so reliable by and large that you just don't have to know that stuff anymore. And I mean, it's not the best analogy in the world, but I mean, that's kind of how I see it. Like, if you don't need to bother with all that other stuff, I mean, I still deal with it every day. I've started to become one of those people who now pick up my phone or my tablet to do a lot of stuff that I used to do on my computer, simply because I feel like using my computer has become more and more of a hassle compared to my phone. To sit down and check my email means I have to turn it on or, log in, do all the things just to get to email. Then, the interacting with the keyboard and a mouse, and like, it's slow. When I want to just get to my email, I just pick up my phone and it's there within 2 seconds. I'm in my email,
Yeah. I think Leo did say what I think is quite accurate, that the beauty of Linux is you have both. You have the power under the hood simplified when it's user facing. And I have to agree with that. And also I see what you're saying, Eric. And I agree, like in certain aspects, like I don't need my whole computer. It's like I don't need to have my entire tool chest sitting on my lap all the time, because like a general purpose computer has so many capabilities that sometimes it's just, it's not all necessary. And just reading my email, I think, is great on the phone, like really quick getting through emails or something like that. But as soon as I need to, I don't know, like do some serious work, I just can't do it on the phone. I have to put the phone down and go to the computer.
Yep.
So,
and I completely agree with that. And what I have ended up doing is I have sort of certain tasks or objectives to complete that I can do part of them in an easier way, but then I'll come back to the computer. Any type of content creation. I mean, I know you can edit video and you can do things on mobile devices, but it's just clunky and hard to do with a touch interface. Using a mouse and a keyboard is just so much easier. So there's absolutely, and I'm sure with CAD and all that kind of stuff, like there's just so many things that make sense. Any kind of real work, right? Computer, absolutely. So I don't see the desktop or the computer ever going away and that I'm never going to have one. It's just I've recognized that I'm like anybody. I go with the path of least resistance. Mm-hmm. And that path for me has diverged a lot from where it used to be, which was no matter what I was doing, I would be sitting in front of my computer because that's just where I wanted to be. And, as time goes by, it becomes more difficult for me to do that compared to, for better, for worse, like mobile devices have just gotten that much better.
Yeah. I want to welcome Steve. He's finally arrived. It's nice to see. It's nice to see your face on the Linux Saloon. It's a different angle. I don't recognize the background.
He's got like an Alfred Hitchcock or like Citizen Kane kind of angle going on there.
Mm-hmm. Very dramatic. Yeah, very dramatic.
Very imposing.
Now you have to say something really prophetic, Steve.
Prophetic?
Yeah, come on. You drop some knowledge.
Oh, God.
You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
Oh, it's good to see you, Steve.
Thanks,
how you doing
buddy.
Tonight?
Okay. Doing all right.
Are you doing a stream in the morning, sir?
Yes, I am.
Oh, good.
It should be all right, set and ready to go. I've actually had some time in the last couple of days to prepare some stuff, doing some changing. I got some cool OBS stuff. I know everybody's probably getting tired of OBS, but
no, I like it because it helps me to see the possibilities.
Yeah, I got some cool stuff that I learned. So
cool beans. So what do you think about Microsoft making concerted effort to make .NET work better on Linux? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I barely remember what .NET was. I know there was certain programs in the past that wouldn't work on Windows without it. I used to use, I think it was called Paint.net, and it had to have the .NET network in it to work. It was a pretty simplified Paint program, but there were a lot of cool add-ons in that you can add to it. It was a neat little program that I used to use for photo stuff and that. But that's about all I know. I mean, there was like all sorts of like different .nets and updates and you know. But I think it's a good thing. I mean, here you're gonna have your group out there that's still gonna poo-poo on, oh, it's Microsoft. Yeah, you know what? It's different owners these days.
Yep.
And I didn't get to read that article. I saw a brief headline that showed Bill Gates, shyly looking at. I don't know where they got the picture from in that, but that he uses Linux. After all these years, which could possibility. I don't know if it's a true story or not, but
I can't imagine it is. Maybe somebody superimposed it on his screen just because,
yeah,
or he accidentally used it.
Is there any benefits on the local machine with .NET, or is it mainly just web-based things?
Oh, no, it's a local thing. So a lot of software, a lot of modern Windows-built software uses the .NET framework. It's like think of it as like the Qt or framework or GTK framework for developing against.
Right.
There's many of them,
Okay.
Or Python even. I mean, it's not exactly, but it's a framework, a thing to build your software within it's supposed to take a lot of the pain out of developing applications. So that's really what it is. It's a series of tools.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Colin, sounds like you have another article here you want to share with us about Rolling Rhino Remix.
Yeah, just a quick one. I'm using it on this. Have been for a few months now. Rolling Rhino Remix, but
well, what is that thing?
It's an Ubuntu based, but it's a rolling Ubuntu.
I was afraid of that hardware that you briefly showed and then put away.
Oh, that's a Surface Go.
Oh, okay.
That's the Surface Go.
Oh, cool.
Speaking of Microsoft, that's Surface Go. But yes, I'm running Rolling Rhino Remix on that for the last few months, running pretty well. But the developer of Rolling Rhino Remix has come out and said that he wants to get serious because it was just a passion for him to start with, and it's a lot of people are using it more than what he expected. So now he's going to redo it and get very serious with it. At the moment, it uses GNOME by default, but he's going to make a new one with the XFCE desktop. So I don't know how that would work on this thing, but yeah, he said that he's going to what was he saying? His main goal was to provide a stable Ubuntu experience while providing a rolling release model. So he didn't expect it to be as popular as what it is. So he's now going to start making it and redo it and call it Rhino Linux instead. So that's what's going to be called. So I just thought I'd bring that to the attention of people. Don't know how much is going to change there besides the desktop, but looks like they're doing a little bit of work on it. And I think by the end of this month or next month, it's going to change. So I'm interested to see where that progress goes. So I just thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah, that's really cool. Oh, the thing that I think personally is, this started out as a pet project by Martin Wimpress.
Yes.
And then has developed into something, I guess, now more serious. I think that's
correct.
It's really exciting. So what are the things that would you say Ubuntu has to offer that maybe some of the other rolling distributions? What makes the rolling Rhino a something to use over other rolling distributions like Arch or OpenSUSE Tumbleweed or
so
the others? Solus?
Well, the one advantage is you don't have to install the interim releases of Ubuntu because this thing follows the development release of Ubuntu.
Okay.
So you're always up to date. So you don't have to reinstall Ubuntu constantly. I see that as an advantage. And also you've got all the Ubuntu stuff there that you need. And somehow the stability, I think he's talking about stability in Rhino Linux. So he wants to make it more stable. From what I've seen, it's pretty stable anyway. It hasn't given me any grief, that's for sure. But he definitely wants to continue and make it a lot more stable than what this one is, he's saying. So, yeah, you've got all the packages that Ubuntu offers. Snaps, they've got little tools where you can remove snaps if you don't like to use snaps. You can install Flatpak and all those sorts of things. So you've got all the provisions that Ubuntu have, except it's rolling. So I think you got some stable packages within Ubuntu. So I see that as being a plus, definitely.
Yeah. What do you think, Skrapjaw? Do you think a Rolling Rhino remix is? What do you think of that? Is it something that compels you to try it out?
I might, because Ubuntu is one of those nice, like, hey, I cut my teeth on it, and it's super easy to get and use. But the only disadvantage to a standard Ubuntu install is a lot of times you're locked into, albeit very stable, packages. But if I ran a business and I had machines I never wanted to update and I just wanted them to work, cool. But I like to tinker, and sometimes I have apps that require something that's the next update, and if I can't use them, then I've run into that a few times in Ubuntu, and it'd be nice to have a little bit more update. I don't necessarily find too many issues with rolling releases, other than Arch being so bleeding edge that it's ridiculous. It's something that's not as, if this is not as like in your face as Arch and is a happy somewhere in between, I would be willing to try it out, for the simple reason that Ubuntu, if we could get Ubuntu Studio like that in a rolling, that would be cool. I forget what it was about Ubuntu Studio that didn't work well because I needed a more updated package. There was something in one of the audio programs I used that was broken, and it was because of a Python package that needed to be updated and fixed, and Ubuntu didn't get it, and it was going to be a while. And so that was an issue. So that's really all I could think about for it. Yeah. I like the fact that they did rolling Rhino, because Ubuntu does their whole, their letter monikers, their whole naming conventions. I did appreciate the little nod there.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I run GNOME on Arch, and then I run GNOME on this. On the Rolling Rhino remix, the GNOME desktop is more up to date than what it is on Arch. A lot quicker, believe it or not. So I was really surprised about that. Yeah, but I suppose maybe that's why they're going to XFCE, so it adds a little bit of stability, because let's face it, GNOME is moving pretty quick at the moment. So maybe that's why they're changing that.
I think my issue with Arch is I was using Garuda, and I do a lot of stuff when in Garuda's, it had so many options that you could change, but if you had to absolutely know what you were doing when you changed them, because it had just check boxes, and when you changed it, the audio stack was busted when I started messing with it. So it could have been some of my issues there. I'm just saying it could be user error. I mean, the Arch people would say it's user error, so
of course.
I'm just gonna let them have it.
I think a great experiment that we should conduct is Eric should go to Rolling Rhino, because he's having problems with his current system, and see if that fixes anything. Just to see. I mean, if you break it, you break it, right?
Well, I actually am sitting here on Manjaro.
Oh.
And I did it just before we started. So I've been slightly distracted just because I've been playing around with things. But what it made me realize, and I'm not sure I would have ever known this in the past, is that distro hopping is actually a bit of a skill. There's the, when you do it regularly, the idea of setting up a new desktop is really trivial, because you know where everything is, and you just, you do it and know the steps by heart. And here I am now, not having, changed for over a year. And I'm like, what am I missing? I remember I have to map these things and change my FS tab and, mount stuff, and I'm just sitting here like running through all this in my head, and it's like I used to have to think about this. Like it was so easy. So yeah, there you go. Distro hopping is a skill.
GNOME Dis. For FS tab, GNOME Dis is the best, I find now. You don't have to muck around with anything these days. Just toggle it and it's done. GNOME Dis to, if you want to, if you've got a separate external hard drive and you want it to mount automatically, GNOME Dis is the best.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
But rolling Rhino wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to try. I'm not sold on Manjaro. I had a little GNOME off earlier where I was sort of just testing different distros and their implementation of GNOME. And I don't know, Manjaro just kind of looked good. They've put a lot of effort into their GNOME release. So
that's good. Something specific that stands out?
Really, just a lot of their desktop stuff. They have their layout chooser and a lot of their like Manjaro specific GNOME based tools to like work to basically make adjustments to all of the stuff, and the easy to customize and launch, like GNOME tweaks and all of the sort of little things that you'd need to sort of play around and customize GNOME are all in one place, along with the layout switcher, which is pretty neat.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. I tried Plasma. I tried other desktop environments, and I kind of would play around, and I gave myself like a task. I'm like, okay, don't just look at it like, and change some settings, like try to do something. And yeah, I just Cinnamon, Plasma, Budgie, like pretty much all of them. I'm so stuck on GNOME at this point. Like I just can't use anything else. It's not good. Because if they go crazy and like do something wacky that drives me crazy, I'm gonna be in trouble. So,
well, that's what I worry about with Pop and them going to the Rust. If it's going to be so much like GNOME, like why do it? But if it's not, is it going to be as good as the implementations that they have done to make Pop, GNOME work really well on Pop?
We actually talked about that earlier, and the idea of, do we need yet another desktop environment? You missed it.
Well, I think.
Well, I was kind of listening. I was making dinner.
Oh, okay.
I think for the piece, I think is a good way of putting it, like between the different communities or between developers. I think Pop going off on their own is probably the best thing. I think to reduce friction within the community, I think that's probably the best, actually. So I think I have a lot of confidence that Pop is going to make something that'll really. Very cool.
They should call it Yade, yet another desktop environment.
Wow. Yeah, why not? Exactly what they should do. Well, very cool. So, Colin, I'm going to expect to hear updates on rolling Rhino from you. See how it's going. If you have any issues, any hiccups. I know being on a rolling distribution, I every once in a while do have a hiccup. Usually they're easily taken care of, but there is a lot. Even a very occasional hiccup still is unwelcome, and so I can see the reasons for having more of a static release or a slower rolling is probably safer. So
I think at the 11th of January is the last Rhino remix they're putting out. Then it will be moving to Rhino Linux, I think is what they said. So just so you know.
I think that's good for them, though, to not stick with remix, because that'll always make it sound like it's lesser in some way.
Right. All right. So also in the news, since we're kind of running out of time here, Fwupd has had an update, 1.8.7. It adds support for more Star Labs Linux laptops and Intel Discrete GPUs. That kind of made me raise my eyebrow in the Spock way, but. The Intel Discrete GPUs, has anybody even seen one of these yet or have one of these?
Mm-mm.
No?
No, I haven't. No.
Well, I think that's...
Like Aren't those like scientific like ones for like compute stuff and AI and all that right now? Like
Yeah,
industrial
I'm not
use?
sure, but it's experimental support right now for Intel's discrete GPUs. So what I think is pretty exciting. So the some of the support here, it's more hardware include for Linux laptops from Star Labs. So probably their upcoming Starfighter laptop, fingerprint, Lenfi devices, ELAN haptic hardware, Goodix, something with a bunch of letters behind it, Anchor Thunderbolt for mini hub, the QSI Godzilla Creek reference hub, as well as experimental support for the Intel discrete GPUs. So it seems like there's like a real, just seems like a lot of work is being done in the more support in Fwupd for firmware upgrades and so forth. What do you think of the whole firmware upgrade business? Does that seem, just in general, like I don't know, kind of like a dodgy thing?
I think it depends on. There was a time where, and especially with home-built desktop systems, where updating your firmware was like, this may go very wrong. And so I think some people, especially maybe computer hobbyists, look at firmware updates. And I think computer hobbyists and Linux users sort of intersect a lot of ways. So maybe to them, updating firmware is sort of a dangerous thing to do. Personally, I've used Fwupd. Like, I think it's amazing. On laptops, especially this Dell that I have, it's, the model is close to 4 years old at this point, and they still are rolling out updates to the firmware. And a lot of the updates are not just like weird changes. They're like, change the fan curve, change like in their actual like useful things. And I love that. I love that maybe Dell is better at updating their older systems than other manufacturers. I'm not sure, but I've had nothing but good luck with it, because and what else is it updated? It's been the main primary firmware of the system, but then also I think I had something else, maybe a peripheral, something where there was an update for the firmware as well. And I was like, wow, that's impressive. So for me, I love, it's yet another thing that Linux does better than Windows does, which it was already true of almost everything else. So the idea that, package management and software distribution is just so much easier on Linux. And, dealing with hardware is generally easier maybe now than it had been in the past. And this is just one more reason why using Linux is just easier, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I haven't really had to deal with any firmware updates on things. So I kind of wonder is that all automatic now?
No. It just shows it alongside with the other updates.
Okay. So maybe it's happened and I just don't even know.
I think you'd probably see it. And also you would notice, because firmware updates almost always require a reboot. And in my boot menu, if I were to, choose to see the boot menu in my BIOS, my UEFI boot entry, there is an entry for firmware update. So it actually boots into a specific, so yeah, I don't think you would update it and not notice, because you're still going to have that reboot where it's the BIOS update screen and your fans kick up, and like it's the traditional update process, but it's the way you're getting the update versus, having to download the manufacturer's little exe that you'd have to boot into Windows, or getting a file and having it on a USB. And my Asus motherboard actually can download the firmware from within the BIOS itself, because it has access to the network stack and can actually go out and download and manage it itself. So that's pretty interesting too. So
isn't that because it's UEFI? Like some of those
I don't know that
ones, they're like a mini OS in them sometimes.
Yeah, and a lot of the BIOS, especially on enthusiast or gaming, focused, performance focused systems, motherboard in particular, it has become like a little mini OS in a way. It's not just graphical menus with a bunch of options. It's actually like mouse driven UI. So
That's even how my old MSI motherboard is, and that has the i7. That's a 5th gen, and what we're at 11th gen 10 now, and it has mouse and keyboard support in it with all the overclocking. It's one of those Z chipsets, so they've had that for a while, but you can go into all kinds of fun stuff in there. You're right, like getting our firmware updates on Linux is so much nicer not having to reboot and go into all of that so much.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Adam made the comment about making software distribution like everything's becoming an app store, and I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. And this is one of those things that just sort of fits right in with that. Your firmware updates just are part of your system update, whether that's software from the main distribution channel for your distribution itself, or there's a flat pack that needs to be updated, and hey, look, there's a firmware update as well.
Well, I think it's good news all around that firmware updates are getting easier in Linux and becoming more widely supported. I'm interested in seeing how this continues to be, all upward trajectory, or if we're going to get some major regressions. I know there are regressions; they always happen, but they're usually fixed pretty quickly. So,
I'm surprised that manufacturers continue to be added on and are supporting it. When I first came out, I thought, this is great. I'm very lucky because Dell decided to jump on the bandwagon, but I thought at that point maybe a couple other manufacturers might support it, or at least, try it on a couple of their models. But it actually seems like it's gotten some traction, and I think that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. All right, so it's going to wrap up the news segment. On the menu for next week is a distro exploration, and to kind of keep things sort of synchronized, or to go along with Linux user space, they recently did Kali Linux. I've never actually looked at Kali Linux before, and I don't recommend you install this on your main system hardware. You probably want to do it in a VM, and also don't do penetration testing on not your computers. So I think the goal here for Kali Linux is to do some exploration of your network and see what you can figure out, like see if you can maybe learn some of your own network's vulnerabilities, play around with that. Also check out Linux user space to their Kali Linux episode to kind of help you along with some of that. So
I highly recommend, when we do this, everyone should mess with Metasploit, because Metasploit is you don't have to be a hacker of like knowing coding knowledge and all of that. It just has a litany of things in there. Point it at your network and just start playing with Metasploit, because it will figure out what devices you have that have exploits. You don't have to tell us what they are, but just find out you go play with Metasploit. And I had it on a Raspberry Pi, and I just flashed it today from using it before. It's really fun. So I'm excited.
Cool. All right, so we'll start like a little, I don't know if thread's the right word, but like somewhere in the Telegram or Discord, there's some different things to try out on your own network at home, no place else. I can't stress that enough. Only attack your own things. Don't attack anything outside of your network. All right. Well, very cool. So next week, Kali Linux, let's have some fun. But for any future Linux distributions or application exploration or discussion topics, you can send those suggestions to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com, and I'd like to put them on the schedule to talk about. So suggestions@linuxsaloon.com, or you can do some, chat thing as well. But I like email. Email's great. Email's fun because I can look at it on my phone and then get off the couch and go to the computer, just like we talked about earlier. So, excellent. Now, for our community free pour, this is a segment where I like to look at the accomplishments of somebody in the community, if they're developing something or discovering something, building something, anything like that. I'd like to, feature somebody who is doing a cool thing. And Ben, you seem to be continually doing cool things with StormOS, and you have an update for us.
Yes, actually. As you all know, last week I talked about a Storm Manjaro version. However, that has been scrapped, and I'm sorry for all the Debian Storm OS users out there. That is going away, I'm sorry to say, because manning 3 systems at a long period of time is a pain in the groin. I am not going to do that anymore. I am sorry. I'm only going to be maintaining 2 variants from now on. Now on, this announcement may come as a shock to some of you, but from henceforth, I am okay. From hence tonight, the new versions are going to be still the arched ISOs, KD and XFCE, and then the new version I am announcing is based on nothing like anything done before. Linux from scratch. Yes, Linux from scratch. And it's not going to be called StormOS this time. It's going to be called Xenix.
Isn't there already a Xenix?
Not that I'm aware of, but
I think there is. You might want to look that up.
let me look that up as we're talking about it.
I think it was made by Microsoft.
Let me just look up the name. If there is, I'm not seeing anything on DuckDuckGo or Google about it, but wait.
Maybe it's spelled differently.
It's a school name, but that's as far as I'm seeing.
Well, they spelled it with an X, so you might be spelling it with a Z.
Actually, it is spelled with an X, but mine is going to be spelled with a Z. Yeah.
Okay.
Z?
Like
yes,
a Z
Z.
or Z. Yeah. So it's going to be called
Z in the
Xenix
civilized
with a
countries.
Z. Yeah. So it means Xenix with a Z. Yeah.
With a Z.
Yeah, Fernum
like
says
ZX Spectrum.
MS did Xenix. Yeah, so it wasn't Xenix. It's Xenix that Microsoft did. So it's long, and Daniel here says Xenix he had worked with years ago. So
he said decades.
It's probably long dead at this point.
I think it's still a thing.
I don't know if it is or not, but yeah, I'm doing one that's spelled with a Z, not with an X. So, regardless, Xenix will now be the new side project alongside of StormOS, and will be the new secondary flavor. And here's the kicker: it's gonna be based on LFS, and I'm gonna use, and the kind folks at UFO, which is another LFS-based system, they have their own set of package builds that they were kind enough to send me the link to use for my project. And I am going to incorporate calamares into this and find a way to do that. And it's going to be spelled Zenux, and it's going to be a very interesting project. I don't know how long this is going to take, but once it's done, I will have it ready for this show. And it's going to use XFCE and some wallpapers that my buddy Razor1981 has contributed to me. And yeah, it's going to be a very interesting project. I will say that. And I look forward to hearing everybody's thoughts about it in Telegram and Discord and whatnot. And we'll see where this goes.
Well, you already got some feedback from Ron Singh. He says, Ben is out of his mind. That is one heck of a project to pursue. Kudos, man. And I will pray for your soul. So he cares about you.
Thank you, Ron. Well, this is going to be a very long and tedious project, but if other people can make an LFS project, so can I. And I hope to get it done soon. I'm not giving any sort of ETA on this because LFS is a heck of a lot worse than Gentoo. And if I can do Gentoo, I can do this.
Well, I think it'll be fun for you regardless. And if nothing else, if it goes nowhere, then at least you've learned something.
Yes. And,
as one Louis Rossman would say.
Yes, and I've started with a multi-lib LFS, and I pray that this doesn't go bad.
Yeah. Well,
Because yeah, my Debian one and my StormOS one were kind of fly-by-night projects, but this one, I hope it doesn't end up that way. Because StormOS has had, over the past 4 years, ever since its inception, and Hackman has had over the past 4 or 5 years, 1,700 downloads, if not more. And I'm hoping that this has that same amount of success.
I'm gonna make Mac OS, but don't get confused. It's MACK OS. Just so
I like it.
It's different.
Well, Adam, you know me. Linux is the name, and that's hopefully the name it'll stick to.
Well, very cool, Ben. Thank you for sharing. I hope it goes well. If nothing else,
Thank you.
Well, just don't stress yourself out. Anna, she gives. She is saying you to just. Anna recommends you focus on a few things.
Is going to be a good project, and hopefully it doesn't overly tax my brain and stuff like that. If it does, I'll take a breather on it, and
Sure.
we'll go from there.
Well, whenever you're ready, give us some updates, for sure.
Well,
but
you'll be getting
Anna Rita
updates as it goes.
Does want to let you know that you need to just focus on a few things, and not too much, because it will be too overwhelm. But that's her 2 cents. So anyway, just be careful.
For that.
Just be careful.
I thank her for that. She's a valued friend, and that's some good advice. Thank you.
All
but
right.
yeah, these two projects, Linux and StormOS, are probably going to be my long-term goal, and we'll keep them going as long as we can. I mean, because
for the Debian version,
projects,
can somebody then just transition for the Debian version? If someone has running the Debian version of StormOS, can they just
they can use the Arch version until the LFS build is ready.
I mean, like the Debian version that you said you're going to stop developing on that.
Stop developing that.
Can they continue to can they transition repositories over to Debian?
But they can transition to normal Debian if they want to. The repositories will still work. It's just they can still use it if they want to. I'm just saying that the StormOS config tool that comes with it will still work. It's just it's not going to get updates. So there won't be new dev files of it, anything like that. But the tool should still work. I just don't know for how long. But the Manjaro version I would not even bother with, because the link is dead. And so that, don't even mess with that.
Okay.
And so yeah, the Debian version should still work. How long, I don't know, but as long as Debian 11 is around, that shouldn't be a problem. But once Debian 12 comes out, I can't say or deny if it'll break or not. So yeah, if you want to continue using it right now, that's fine. But again, if Debian 12 comes out at any point, which it will, then you're gonna have to maybe convert to vanilla Debian or another Debian.
Gotcha. And the alternative gives some more caution to about overwhelming yourself. Yeah. Don't burn yourself out.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting project, and this development is my passion, and it's what I do alongside gaming and a couple of other things, and it's not easy to burn myself out on this, but I don't want to put too many eggs in one basket. So that's kind of why I'm only focusing on these two projects and letting the other ones go, pretty much, for lack of a better word. So.
All right. Well, excellent. Thank you very much, Ben. I'm going to go ahead and close this out.
Updates on the LFS as we go along. So.
Excellent.
So you guys are coming for the ride with me on this one.
Should be fun. All right, now it's time for last call. Steve, you said you're doing a stream tomorrow. How many minutes late are you going to start, and should we do an over under?
You'll have to find out.
Okay. So
You'll
Vince,
have to find out.
What are you thinking?
Everything's all set, so that means disaster's coming.
I think at least 5 minutes late. What do you think? What do you think, Vince?
Yeah, I'll take wages on 5 minutes.
Okay.
I do have a 10-minute timer to start the stream out. So.
I'm thinking 7. I'm going with 7.
Well, you guys are optimistic.
12.
So what do you think, Eric? How late is he going to start tomorrow?
At least 15.
15? Okay. All right. I'm saying, apparently I'm in your court, Steve. I'm saying only 5. Adam says 7. And what would you say, Vince?
I'm with you, Nate. 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay. All right.
I have faith in Steve.
Well, if
All
I
right.
do my 10-minute timer 5 minutes early, that's okay.
What? So when I say start, it means like something is coming through the speakers. That means like I can hear your music, a countdown, something. So we'll see.
Gotcha.
All right. So that's tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Central or 9 Eastern. Don't know Pacific. I have no idea if Destination Linux is streaming live tomorrow. I probably should have checked on that. If not, they normally stream on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern. Linux User Space, next episode, they're going to be talking about it'll be their topic feedback show, and we're going to be looking at Linux Lite in the next month. So that may be our next distribution is Linux Lite that we check out. For Linux Out Loud, the topic was, what is in your apocalypse-ready tech bag? It was a fun talk, and you might like it too, coming out this Wednesday. I do things on cubiclelate.com. I actually released a couple articles today because I spent a lot of time sitting in a car, so I did some writing, because what else are you going to do sitting in a car? So I wrote about OPI, and I finally finished my NSCDE article, which is only like a month late. So you can check that out, cubiclelate.com. Linux Saloon is part of the Tux Digital Network. Check out more great shows at tuxdigital.com. I want to thank you all for being a part of this conversation in both the Zoom meeting and the YouTube/Twitch stream, as well as everyone for watching the show after the fact. I want to thank everyone involved in making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back into personal computers. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yas.
Bye.
Bye,
Good
everybody.
night, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye.
What do you think of this white chocolate? Is a Rolling Rhino remix something that would be of interest to you? Maybe I caught him at a bad time.
Oh, well.
Talking to me.
Oh, anybody.
Who talk?
So the where's that list of stuff here?
I think just before we go any further, I think Ben just had an announcement tonight. I think
Yes.
we may have missed that. Or
Nope.
Yeah.
He's a community member focus. We're going to get to that in just a moment.
Oh, okay.
So I gave him his own segment. He gets his own segment because he is that special.
Fair
No
enough.
one's ever called me special, Nate.
Well, you heard it here first, Ben. Don't let that swinging door hit you on the way out.
Oh,
And drink responsibly, too.
Sassy Nate.
That won't,
And,
that won't make the
guys,
final recording.